to another episode of Celebrity Catwalk. If you're catching us on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that little bell so you can like and subscribe, and you won't miss a single episode. Today we have a very special guest. Jillian, thank you very much for being here. I'm going to refer to you as Jillian from thatjillian.com. Am I right?
That is correct. That is true.
Correct. And this is a very interesting topic. But first, I want to make sure that we talk about your book.
Yes.
Is this your first book?
This is my first book. It's my book baby.
It is we have the book baby here. It is The Unlonely Planet. And I think we're going to delve into this a little bit more, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but I definitely want to make sure we put on the docket that we discuss how I feel social media has kind of isolated people and made people less personable. I think you hear people say, look up from your phones and look up, but I digress, so I apologize. Jillian, please tell us where do we, picture it, Sicily, 1926. Please take us to the beginning and how we got here and what led you to start Unlonely Planet, The Joy List, and The Joy List Social.
Yes.
Thank you.
So in 2016, I moved to New York City, and I had this big vision of moving here. I was finally an adult, going to a new town, and I decided I was just going to start my life. And did the things that everyone tells you should do to make friends. So I was going to bars, doing a lot of social activities. I was doing a lot of improv and sketch comedy, which
you were really
I love. I was in it. And I found myself still feeling really disconnected from the people around me. I noticed I was feeling kind of like we were having surface level interactions, and there was something about it that was carrying over from a feeling I had in college where I still kind of felt not really satisfied with my relationships.
I'm sorry, I want us to unpack that a little more, because that's incredible, because from what you just told me, it sounded like you had a vibrant and robust social life.
Totally.
But you didn't feel that it was that deep.
Yeah, that was the thing, is I was around a lot of people, I was having a lot of conversations, but I think there were two problems, is that one, I didn't have the social skills to ask people good questions, to be a good listener, to have the person who is with me feel comfortable enough to go a little deeper, which is what feels really nourishing to me. And at the same time, I wasn't necessarily around people who had those skills themselves. And so I just said to myself, I'm going to take a year and do whatever it takes to find my people. And so I went to festivals by myself and retreats by myself and events by myself, and eventually started to find people who I felt like really inspired me to be a better version of myself.
Okay. So it wasn't, what I find so interesting is you've stuck me with, you took time to be by yourself to deepen and strengthen, I guess, yourself so that you could have deeper relations. Am I getting that right? So that
Completely.
You could connect more with other people.
Yeah, that I was kind of removing myself from my comfortable, normal social situation, and I was getting uncomfortable. I was going to new things, and there were plenty of times where I showed up at something and I didn't like it. And I think it's very easy for someone, including myself, to go somewhere new. It's not super fun. I don't feel like I connect with people, and to be like, well, goes to show, I shouldn't do anything new. I should just stick in my routine. And I think it's kind of, you have to take the same approach with friendship as you do with dating, where if you go on one bad date, everyone's gonna say, oh, there's plenty of fish in the sea. You've got to put yourself out there. You got to keep doing it. And the same thing applies with friendship. But since we don't talk about friendship that much, there's a lot of shame in kind of not knowing how to connect with people, not feeling like we have the right people in our lives, when in reality it takes just as much time and energy to really cultivate those relationships and find those people.
Right. So you, and so the coaching that you do is actually, correct me if I'm wrong, is multifaceted, because you're coaching people on how to be less lonely, but does it also translate into business? Or should I say, like, being an entrepreneur, or I guess when you're working for yourself and being by yourself, as you said, you find yourself to not really have these deeper relationships. So are you able to help, I guess, pull that out of people to connect better with others? I'm probably not even saying.
Yeah, well, so what I'm hearing is kind of like, what are the offerings that I have? Is that right?
Yes.
So, yes, totally, people who work for themselves can be really lonely. Being an entrepreneur is really lonely, or running a company can be really lonely, because from what I hear from a lot of people who have a lot of employees, it's kind of like, I don't want to show my vulnerabilities. I have to be the leader. I have to be strong.
Right.
And so I offer two things. One is for people in New York City. It is a monthly cohort that meets every week for 4 weeks, and we go through different social challenges. Because if you just move to New York City, if you're in a moment of transition, it can be hard to meet people who really want to commit to deepening relationships. So to say, what if I'm with a group of 12 people every week this month? We're having conversations about what's going on in our lives. We're being vulnerable with each other. And every week we go out and we do something together. And I like to keep those a surprise, but an example could be do a movement class that you've never done before with all of these people. And we end every group with a party where I invite a bunch of people I love, they invite all the people they met that month, and we get an excuse for someone to invite new people to their life into a kind of like the next level of friendship. And I also do that online as well. For anyone who wants to learn how to make new friends, they can join a virtual group as well.
So it's not it's twofold, because if we're in New York City, I can meet with you personally.
Yes.
But if I'm in Spokane or Missoula, Montana, I can also connect with you virtually.
Yes.
Through thatjillian.com?
Yes.
Okay. We have to talk about the book, how, why, where, when, who. Tell us, please, how The Unlonely Planet came to be.
Yes. So when I'd moved to the city and I'd finally found these events where I really felt like I connected, what I realized was that what made these spaces different is there was an element of facilitated connection. So it wasn't just like I go to a yoga class and I do the thing and then I leave, because it's really awkward to try and connect with someone on a deeper way, even though arguably a lot of people go to yoga to make new friends. Right. So instead to say, this is a real thing in New York City called Flow and Tell, where it's a yoga class followed by a dinner, followed by a concert. And so you have all of this time to connect with people and have conversation, and there's someone there who's giving you permission to do that. So before the book, I started my newsletter, The Joy List, which is events you can go to by yourself, leave with a new friend, and it's only facilitated connection. And starting that newsletter is what showed me how much of an issue loneliness is, especially in New York City, because suddenly all these people started coming to me at parties, into my inbox, and sharing these really vulnerable stories of loneliness with me. And I just knew that this is a thing that needs to be talked about more often, and that's what led to the book.
When I was looking and reading about you online, I found it was such an anomaly to me to see lonely and New York, and lonely, because I think when we think of New York, especially, I mean, I'm sure they're even running jokes about it, that you're never alone in New York.
Totally.
You're never alone. You just ride the subway. You just go outside and you're never alone. So, but what you've said is so telling, and it's really even resonated with me, that you're just going to these certain things even if you're with people, and then you're going back home. There's not necessarily a connection, a deep connection, whether it's work, whether it's the yoga class, the spinning class, the Zumba class, and then you're going back. So you really take a moment and think about it, and you can see how people could be lonely. But at first blush, I have to tell you, I was like, you'd say lonely, New York City.
Totally.
What are you talking about?
Totally. I think the thing that's missing is that we're around a lot of people, but there's not a lot of moments to kind of pause and feel like, wow, that person really listened to me. And they asked me some really great questions, and they weren't interrupting, and we could just have a moment to breathe and connect. It's very rare. And so I find those spaces are sacred to me, and I really want to just promote the people who make those spaces. I think they're really needed.
Incredible. So that was really the impetus that led you to write the book.
Yes.
How long did it take you to write the book?
In author time, I knocked it out. In my personal life, it felt like forever.
Of course.
But I did it in a year.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And I'm sure the response. I'm assuming that I wasn't the only person who felt like, New York lonely or just, I guess, just the planet in general. I shouldn't even just give New York such a bad rap.
Yeah.
But I think everywhere you go, because I'm sure this applies to everyone outside of the city too, is that there are just so many people everywhere. But as you have really explained, you're not. It's really superficial or just surface relationships.
Completely.
It's not making any deeper connections. So I want to make sure we go over the triad, if you will, of the three things. So we've got the Unlonely Planet.
Yes.
And then we touched on the Joy List, but please tell us a little bit more. So is it a daily?
It's a weekly newsletter.
A weekly newsletter.
Every Monday morning, the time when people are the least looking forward to their day. It's like, oh man, I had this fun weekend and now I'm going into the week. So I send it on Monday mornings to show there's so many incredible things going on in the city that you get to look forward to this week.
Nice. And so and I can sign up for that at that Jillian.com?
At joylist.nyc is the easiest way to do that.
Okay.
And also we have a global newsletter for anyone who's just interested in community building in general in their city.
That's it, community building. Because would you, if you had to put, when you fill out your taxes, do you put that you are do you consider yourself really a community builder above all?
I mean, when I'm filling out my taxes, I say I'm a writer and event designer. Okay. And in conversation with people, I love saying that I'm a community builder because I think that it's a way of spending time and using energy that people don't respect that much. And it's a thing that if I say like, oh, I'm a coder at Facebook, you can think like, wow, you do a lot of things and you probably make a lot of money and your job is important. But if I say I'm a community organizer, there's a kind of a lack of status with that, which to me is really sad because community organizers and community builders, I think, are the foundation of society. And it's unfortunate that we work so hard, we put out so much energy, and I see time and time again people like me who create events and are really giving to their community burning out after 3 years because they're just not making enough money to sustain themselves and they don't have resources. In tech, there's so many resources and programs and accelerators to teach you how to really make it work. But with community building, that's not the case yet.
Please, I think I was reading, correct me if I'm wrong, I might have been reading it on your website, that back in high school and when we were younger, I think there was more, I don't want to call it forced communities, or maybe that is, but there was, maybe because it was 4 years that you were with people, and college as well, you were with people, and so would you consider those times, or those were the last times that you built stronger relationships with people, and now, because those days of necessarily being with someone every day that doesn't necessarily always happen, you're not building that stronger bond with people. So do you find that as you get older, the sense of community changes? I don't want to put ageism with it, but is that do you find that to be the case?
I think for a lot of people that is the case because, like you said, high school and college, you're in communities and organizations where you're consistently seeing people. And so if I'm seeing you Monday through Friday every day, I'm going to know what's going on in your life. If you're sharing with me, I'm going to see how things are changing. And so it's easier to foster intimacy. And also if we're in an activity together, if we're doing something that's difficult, like we're on a sports team together, we have all these ways for us to really feel bonded to each other. And when we're an adult, I think the thing that people miss is we really have to actively create that in our lives and prioritize it. Otherwise, it's very easy to fall into, I go to work, I go to the gym, and I go home. And I don't really talk to people at my work, and I don't talk to anyone at the gym, and then maybe I use a dating app, and that feels really shallow, and it makes me not want to do that. And I hear people saying this all the time. And so for me personally, my relationships now are far deeper than they were when I was in high school or college because I'm really prioritizing spending one-on-one time with people, being in groups, and having those conversations where people feel safe enough and I feel safe enough to be vulnerable and really share what's going on. But that is a skill that is learned.
Okay. Yes, I feel like, and this has been a common thread of topics that we've discussed many times here on the show, social media has truly a gift and a curse,
Totally.
if you will. And of course it's great because Grandma Mildred and Grandpa Joe can see the pictures of little Johnny or little Susie growing up if they live on one part of the country and you live on the other, and you can connect with people. I just connected today with a girlfriend who found me on Facebook that I went to high school with. So it's really great, but how, I think to your point, it's social media is isolating us further.
Totally.
Is there a way around that, or you just have to keep making that conscious effort to, like you said, do more facilitated connections, if you will?
I think it depends. I had a friend say to me once, it depends if you use social media to connect or to compare. So, for example, I love community building. So on Twitter, it's an incredible place for me to meet community builders from all over the world, and people in venture capital who care about community, and people in healthcare, and people in government. And it's an awesome place for all of us to come together. But if I'm on Instagram and I'm seeing photos of people who are around my age and they're buying a house and they're getting married, and I'm saying, oh, I'm not buying a house, I'm not getting married, now I'm judging myself. And to say, okay, how am I using this? Am I comparing my life to other people's lives, or am I connecting to people who I wouldn't have the chance to connect with otherwise? And so I feel like that's a more nuanced way of looking at it. And I've heard stories from people who say that social media is the one place where they can connect with people who are like them. So like if they're homebound, if they're in a wheelchair, if they're a queer kid who lives in the South, there's really beautiful ways to use social media that I don't hear in the conversation about social media that much, because most of my identities are very mainstream. I'm a straight white lady, so I don't really need to go to the internet to necessarily find my people. But a lot of people do have that.
There are, I don't know why, because I am an absolutely horrible cook, but somehow I have found myself in the Instapot community on Facebook. I don't even own an Instapot.
You're like, I just love this.
But I just, of course, I'm a foodie, so I love seeing these different recipes. So you're right. It can connect you with it can enable, if you will, to find your tribe, as they say. But to your point also, you have to use it. You have to be conscious. And I feel like we live at a time when people are more unconscious than not, or not conscious than not. So I'm definitely going to remember what you said about connecting and not comparing.
Yeah.
And so you have to be conscious of how you're using social media to strategically connect as opposed to other things. How does because I remember my days in the 9-to-5 office, and what you said about what really stuck with me is bosses or business leaders, I feel they have to walk a very fine line between, like I said, are you a friend to your employees, or is there a sense of community, or is fostering a sense of community in the workplace a good or a bad thing? Do you find people having those challenges?
Oh, completely. I was at a conference last year called CMX, which is a conference for professional community builders and corporate community builders. And my talk was about ways that companies can reduce loneliness, because the rates of loneliness in America are so terrifying, where the average American has one close friend, and 75% of Americans are not satisfied with their friendships. And at the same time, we're spending a third of our lives at work. So from where I'm standing, it's clear that there's a connection between this huge chunk of our lives that we're spending with a company and how dissatisfied we are with our relationships. So I argue that even though we could say, oh, your company doesn't need to be your community, like you're responsible for that on your own, clearly we need to have some sort of psychological safety in the workplace to say, if I'm experiencing an emotion, I want to know it's okay for me to share that. And I want to know that my boss is skillful enough to handle it. I want to be able to be real, so that I can give myself fully in this career and not feel like I'm fully shutting my body down and my needs down, which I think a lot of people really feel.
Yes. I think back to the days of going into an office from 9 to 5, and I didn't feel a sense of, we had fun and we were coworkers and colleagues and it was great, but community is not a word that I would find used much in the workplace.
Totally.
Okay. I want to make sure we also cover the Joy List
Social. Yes.
Please
Yes.
tell us about that.
So I've got the Joy List, the newsletter. I was doing that for, I think, 3 years. So I've been sending it every week for almost 4 years now.
Okay.
And I was just thinking about it. It was like, well, I keep promoting all these events that facilitate connection. Maybe I should also try hosting an event and put it in my own newsletter. And so I hosted the first one August of last year, and we've been doing it every month. And it's pretty much just a really great way, especially if you have social anxiety, to be in a place where you know everyone is there to make a new friend, and we guide you through the process. So when you come in, we have different questions that you can ask people, so you don't have to wonder, what's the first thing I'm going to ask somebody? We do some mindfulness exercises, we do some conversation exercises, we get you introducing your conversation partner to somebody else. And at the end, we ask people to share what they're going to that month that they want to invite people to, and also to say what kinds of activities they're doing that they would love people to join them in. So for example, there was a man this month who said he was learning how to stud a denim jacket. And he was just like, if anyone wants to craft with me, I'm totally down. And a bunch of people were like, oh man, I'm in fashion, or I want to learn how to do that. That sounds cool. And they're exchanging phone numbers. And so every month people are sharing these things, and it's really cool to see. People just want people to go and hang out with, but it feels really vulnerable unless you know that that's a welcome offer.
Right. I think what I find so interesting is I think there are some people, do you think that there are some people, is there such a thing as just not, I don't want to call them, I guess, introverts or just not social, or who just don't, who suffer. I find it so interesting. So there are people who truly suffer from anxiety from being around other people. And is that something that you can overcome, or do you think it's ingrained within you?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have a lot of experience with people who have diagnosed anxiety disorders, but I think in New York City, a lot of us walk around with just kind of generalized anxiety. And so I cannot tell you the amount of times someone has come up to me at my event and they say, you know, typically I'm so afraid to talk to someone new because I have a story in my head that they don't want to talk to me and I'm going to be bothering them. And so to be in a space where I know that everyone is open to talking to me, it makes it feel so much safer for me to approach someone new. And I think that's just a human thing.
Yes. I think you're right. I think that, I don't want to say people overthink things, but you're right. I think people create these preconceived notions because many times you start talking to someone and, like you said, they let their guard down. They say, they become, once you talk to them for a while and see where they're coming from, there's a whole different side, or there is a story, or there's something behind the angst or the agita that they are feeling and experiencing that makes a difference. So the Joy List Social is the monthly event that you're creating here in New York City. And then the Joy List is, you create two. You created a curated New York City newsletter, but also I can be anywhere in the world and get a newsletter as well. And then let's talk about the kind of coaching that you offer.
Yeah, so the coaching, New York City based, if you live here, that meets every week. And we're doing those social challenges, we're meeting to have vulnerable conversations. There's the party at the end of the month and the virtual group. Also, there are some people in the virtual group who live in New York City but just can't make the in-person group or want to just see the virtual or the digital recordings, because it's kind of like we're doing sharing, but I'm also teaching a brief lesson every week.
Okay, nice. And do you find that you have just a wide range of people in this group, like men, women, young, old,
Completely.
from all different nationalities and walks of life. So this is just something that happens with everyone.
Yeah, I've been really blessed to see that because I think, of course, we all live in our own personal experience. So for me, being in my 20s, living in New York City, it's easy for me to think, oh, okay, people who've just recently graduated from college are the loneliest. But then meeting so many women whose kids have just gone to college and they're single mothers, empty nesters, I know so many women who are empty nesters who go through my programs or who I've just been in conversation with, and it's such an emotional time, or people who've gone through a divorce and suddenly there's a lot of men who are in their 60s who have come to my events because they're like, I don't know where to go to connect with people. Like, what is the place for me? And just to welcome everyone in, and it's this great kind of strange mishmash of different communities.
So interesting. Wow. Do you find, of course I like to pretend that I'm still 27 years old, but that is not the case. And I'm very happy to say that my husband is socially social media challenged, and we didn't meet on social media, but I know we touched on it, but dating and social media and I say that to say that young people today, like I have friends in their early 20s, and the whole calling and go, I see you're like
oh no, you're like if the call something is wrong.
The cold calling and the whole, when my husband and I met, we were not on, there were dating apps and that wasn't even a part of it. Is that making it even more? I'm sure you're finding people who are dealing with the whole dating / texting online that I don't think dating today is the same as, and I don't even want to say in my day because I'm not, 85 years old, but just even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it's different now.
Completely. I think for me, what I've seen in my own personal experience using dating apps, seeing those things, is that a lot of people don't have a good relationship with themselves. And if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, there's no way you're going to feel like you belong anywhere. And so, like back when I was using a dating app, and I would go on dates with these guys, and I would kind of ask them, like, what are you excited about in your life right now? What's going on? And so many people would just say, oh, like I go to work, I go to the gym, and that's what I do. And so now, if I ever go and venture back onto a dating app, that's the number one question I ask is, what are you excited about this week? Because if they don't have anything, then that's a good sign we're not going to get along.
Wow. Right. So you get that right up front. I can't believe it. That is our time. Julia, this has been great.
Thank you.
We will definitely have to have you back because I feel like this is constantly evolving and constantly changing. And so I want to definitely have you back with more updates. We can connect with you on thatjillian.com.
Yes.
thejoylist.nyc.
It is joylist.nyc.
No preposition.
I know.
Sorry. So sorry.
Yep. No, you're totally fine. It makes sense that you said that.
Joylist.nyc. And we can find you on Instagram also under That Jillian.
Yes.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for catching us on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that you won't miss a single episode. Thank you very much. Until next time.